My wife said her boss paid for the hotel suite, and she owed him a fun night. I just texted back, "Send me the room number." Next morning, she opened that door, expecting room service. Instead, she found me standing there with his wife, HR, and my daughter, the corporate attorney, recording everything. My name is Randall Fisher. I'm 48 years old, and I've spent the last 23 years building a consulting firm specializing in automotive supply chain optimization. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest, and it's kept us comfortable. My daughter Samantha from my first marriage is 27 now, a sharp corporate attorney who inherited her old man's instinct for reading people. My second wife, Courtney, is 41 and works as Director of Corporate Partnerships at Davidson Automotive, one of the biggest players in Detroit's revival story. We met at an industry conference 7 years ago. She was smart, driven, beautiful in that polished way that corporate climbers master. I was recently divorced, lonely, and flattered that someone like her would notice someone like me. We got married fast, maybe too fast. Her career took off. Mine stayed steady. That should have been my first warning. It was a Thursday evening in November when she walked into our kitchen in Royal Oak wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my first car. She had that look, the one where she's already made up her mind about something, and she's just going through the motions of telling you. "I'm going to the regional conference in Chicago this weekend," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine without offering me one. "The Automotive Summit." I asked, looking up from the proposal I was reviewing. "I thought that wasn't until January." She took a long sip before answering. "It's a separate event. Leadership retreat. Mitchell arranged it for the executive team." Mitchell Garrison, her boss, 52 years old, regional vice president, the kind of guy who wore cufflinks to video calls and talked about disruption like it was a religion. I met him twice at company functions. Both times he'd looked at me like I was furniture. "When do you leave?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Tomorrow afternoon." She scrolled through her phone while she talked. "I'll be back Sunday evening." "You just telling me now?" "I'm telling you now because I'm going." "It's not a discussion, Randall." There it was. That edge in her voice, the one that had been getting sharper for months. I set down my pen and looked at her directly. "Fair enough. What hotel?" She hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. "The Palmer House." "Why?" "Just curious. Fancy place. Mitchell's paying for my suite. He thinks I deserve it after landing the Henderson contract." She said it casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, "I owe him a fun night." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I didn't react, didn't flinch, just watch her face for any sign that she realized what she just said. But she was already walking toward the stairs, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "Text me the room number," I called after her. She stopped, turned halfway, and gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Surprise? Irritation? Something else? "Why would you need that?" "In case there's an emergency." "There won't be." She disappeared up the stairs. I sat there for a long time after she left, staring at the proposal I could no longer focus on. Then I walked out to the garage, past the classic Mustang I'd been restoring, past the toolbox I'd inherited from my father, and opened the metal filing cabinet in the corner. Bottom drawer behind the old tax returns. 2 folders. One red, one blue. I'd started building them 6 months ago, when the signs became impossible to ignore. Call it paranoia, call it preparation, call it whatever you want. I called it documentation. And tonight, that documentation was about to become very useful. Because if she thought I was going to sit at home while she owed her boss a fun night, she'd badly miscalculated the man she married. Friday morning arrived with gray skies and the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Courtney left at noon, dragging a suitcase that seemed too large for a 2-night trip. She didn't kiss me goodbye, just called out from the driveway that she'd see me Sunday. I waited until her car disappeared down the street, then pulled out my phone and called Samantha. "Hey, Dad." She answered on the second ring. "What's up? You busy?" "Just finished a client meeting." "What?" "Can you come by the house? I need your professional opinion on something." There was a pause. My daughter knew me well enough to hear what I wasn't saying. "Give me 30 minutes. She arrived 40 minutes later, still in her work clothes, a tailored navy suit that made her look older than 27. She'd inherited her mother's sharp features and my tendency to see through nonsense. I handed her the red folder as soon as she sat down at the kitchen table. "How long have you been building this?" she asked, flipping through the pages. 6 months, give or take." She studied the expense reports, the calendar screenshots, the credit card statements I'd pulled from our joint account. Her face remained neutral, professional, but I saw her jaw tighten. The hotel charges are damning, she said quietly. Same nights, she told you she was working late at the office. 3 different cities over 4 months. That's what I thought. She looked up at me. Does she know you have this? No idea. Good. Keep it that way. She closed the folder and pushed it across the table. Dad, I'm going to be direct with you. This is enough for a divorce attorney to work with, especially given the prenup clause about infidelity. There's a clause. Section 9. You signed it 7 years ago. Professional infidelity voids spousal support and triggers unequal asset distribution in your favor. She pulled out her phone and started typing. I helped draft it, remember? You were worried about exactly this scenario. I'd forgotten. Or maybe I'd wanted to forget. She's in Chicago right now, I said. With Mitchell Garrison, her boss. Samantha's expression hardened. The VP. That's the one. She told me last night he paid for her suite. Said she owed him a fun night. She said that, out loud, word for word. My daughter stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the November afternoon. When she turned back, there was something cold in her eyes that reminded me of her mother during the custody battle. I have a colleague at my firm who specializes in corporate malfeasance, she said. If Garrison's using company funds for personal affairs, that's a violation of about 6 different corporate governance policies. And if Courtney's benefiting from those arrangements, she's complicit. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we don't just document this, Dad. We weaponize it. She picked up her phone again. Give me the hotel name and the approximate time frame. I'll make some calls. To who? She smiled, and it wasn't warm. To people who owe me favors. Corporate attorneys talk, Dad. If Davidson Automotive has even a whisper of an HR complaint about Garrison, I'll know about it by Monday. I looked at my daughter, this fierce young woman who'd learned early that trust was earned and loyalty had limits, and I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not even sadness. Just clarity. Make the calls, I said. Saturday morning. My phone rang at 7:30. Unknown number, but I answer anyway. Mr. Fisher. A woman's voice, cultured, controlled. My name is Elaine Garrison. I believe we need to talk. I sat up straighter in my kitchen chair. Mitchell Garrison's wife. I met her once, briefly, at a charity gala 3 years ago. She'd worn pearls and an expression that suggested she was evaluating everyone in the room and finding them wanting. Mrs. Garrison, this is unexpected. I imagine it is. There was no warmth in her voice, but there was something else. Purpose. I received a very interesting phone call last night from an attorney named Samantha Fisher. She tells me our spouses are currently sharing a suite at the Palmer house. My daughter worked fast. She's correct. I suspected as much. This isn't the first time Mitchell has strayed, but it is the first time someone's bothered to inform me with documentation. She paused. Your daughter mentioned you might be interested in addressing this situation directly. What did you have in mind? I'm flying to Chicago this morning. I've already contacted Janet Robertson from Davidson's HR department. She and I served on a nonprofit board together years ago. She owes me a favor, and she's very interested in corporate misconduct involving senior executives. I had to admire the efficiency. You move quickly. I've had practice. Her voice turned colder. Mitchell thinks I'm a decorative spouse who doesn't pay attention. What he doesn't know is that my family's trust fund is worth $45 million, none of which he can touch thanks to the prenuptial agreement my father insisted upon. When I'm done with him, he'll have his reputation, his career, and precisely nothing else. Sounds like you have this handled. I do, but I thought you might want to be there when we knock on that hotel room door. Janet will bring recording equipment and corporate documentation. I'll bring a divorce attorney. You can bring whatever you need to bring. I thought about Courtney's face when she told me she owed Mitchell a fun night. The casual dismissal, the arrogance, the assumption that I'd just accept it. What time's your flight arrive? 11:40. I'll meet you at the Palmer house at 1 o'clock. Lobby, near the registration desk. I'll be there. Good. And Mr. Fisher? Bring your daughter if she's available. I like attorneys who don't waste my time. She hung up before I could respond. I immediately called Samantha. Dad, what's wrong? How do you feel about a quick trip to Chicago? When? Today. Elaine Garrison wants us there when she confronts them. There was a moment of silence, then my daughter laughed. It was sharp and satisfied. She's a trust fund heiress worth $45 million, Dad. I looked her up last night. If she's moving against her husband, he's already finished. She just doesn't know it yet. You coming? I'll pick you up in 30 minutes. And Dad, where's something nice? This is going to be memorable. We drove to Chicago in Samantha's BMW, 3 hours of highway and planning. She'd printed out additional documentation overnight, cross-referenced corporate policies, and prepared what she called a strategic overview of legal exposure points. My daughter had inherited my attention to detail, but she'd added a killer instinct I'd never quite possessed. At 1 o'clock, we walked into the Palmer House lobby. Elaine Garrison was waiting near the registration desk, exactly as promised. She wore a black coat, minimal jewelry, and an expression that could freeze water. Next to her stood a woman in her mid-40s carrying a leather briefcase. Mr. Fisher, Elaine said, extending her hand. This is Janet Robertson, Senior Director of Human Resources at Davidson Automotive. Janet shook my hand with a grip that meant business. I've reviewed the preliminary documentation your daughter sent. If what we find upstairs confirms the pattern, we're looking at multiple policy violations and potential misuse of corporate funds. Do we have a room number? I asked. Samantha held up her phone. Suite 1847. Courtney texted it to Dad this morning. She probably thought he wouldn't use it. Elaine's smile was thin and sharp. Then let's not keep them waiting. The elevator ride to the 18th floor felt longer than it was. None of us spoke. Janet checked her recording device. Elaine stared at the floor numbers climbing. Samantha stood beside me, her face set in the expression she wore in courtrooms. When the doors opened, we walked down the carpeted hallway in silence. Suite 1847 was at the end, corner unit, the kind with a view and a price tag to match. I could hear music inside, something low and jazzy, and voices. I knocked 3 times, firm and steady. The music stopped. Footsteps approached the door, lighter ones. Then it opened, and there was Courtney, wearing a hotel robe, her hair down, a glass of wine in her hand. She was smiling, that easy, comfortable smile of someone who thinks they're getting away with something. The smile died when she saw me. Randall. Her voice went up half an octave. What are you? Then she saw Elaine. Then Janet. Then Samantha holding up her phone, already recording. Oh God, Courtney whispered. May we come in? Elaine's voice was arctic. I believe my husband is expecting room service. Mitchell Garrison appeared behind Courtney, shirt untucked, barefoot, holding his own wine glass. He froze when he saw his wife. Elaine, I can explain. No need. Elaine walked past Courtney into the suite like she owned it. The rest of us followed. Janet, you'll want to document the room charges on the company card, I assume. Janet was already photographing the open laptop on the desk, the expense report visible on the screen. Davidson Automotive Corporate Card, charged to Executive Discretionary Fund. Suite rate is $4,200 for the weekend. That's a lot of discretion, Samantha said, still recording. Mitchell set down his glass, his face going from red to pale. This is a private matter. It stopped being private when you used corporate funds. Janet's voice was clipped, professional. As of this moment, you're both under formal investigation for violation of the corporate ethics policy, specifically sections regarding undisclosed relationships between supervisory personnel and misuse of company resources. Courtney grabbed my arm. Randall, please, this isn't what it looks like. I stepped back, letting her hand fall away. It looks like exactly what you told me it was. You owed him a fun night. Seems like you're paying that debt. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? I asked. My voice was calm, quieter than hers. Because from where I'm standing, you told your husband you were going to sleep with your boss, then did exactly that. The only surprise here is that you didn't expect me to show up. Samantha moved closer to Mitchell, her phone still recording. Mr. Garrison, for the record, are you aware that Davidson Automotive's ethics policy requires disclosure of any romantic relationship between employees in supervisory roles? I'm not answering that. That's fine. Your silence will be noted in the formal report. She turned to Janet. How many policy violations are we documenting? At least 4, Janet said, typing on her tablet. Possibly 6, depending on how far back this goes. Elaine walked to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. When she spoke, her voice carried across the room. Mitchell, I want you to understand something very clearly. By Monday morning, every senior executive at Davidson will know exactly what happened in this room. My attorney will file divorce papers by Tuesday. And because you violated our prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause, you'll leave our marriage with precisely what you brought into it, which, if memory serves, was $47,000 and a leased Audi. Mitchell's face collapsed. Elaine, we can work this out. We're done working anything out. She turned from the window. Enjoy your fun night, Mitchell. It's the last one you'll have on someone else's money. She walked past him without another glance and left the suite. Janet followed, still typing. Samantha looked at me, waiting. I looked at Courtney one last time. She was crying now, mascara running, the wine glass shaking in her hand. The house is in my name, I said quietly. The cars, the accounts, everything we built. Section 9 of our prenuptial agreement is very clear about professional infidelity. You should probably call a lawyer. Randall. But I was already walking toward the door, my daughter beside me, leaving behind the wreckage of a marriage that had been dying for months. It just hadn't known it was already dead. Monday morning arrived with headlines I didn't expect. Samantha called me at 6:30, before I'd finished my first cup of coffee. Dad, turn on the news. Local business section. I grabbed the remote and found the channel. There it was, scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Davidson Automotive VP Mitchell Garrison, placed on administrative leave, pending ethics investigation. They move fast, I said. Janet doesn't mess around. She had the board briefed by Sunday night. Samantha paused. Dad, there's something else. Something I found out yesterday that I need to tell you. The tone in her voice made me sit down. What is it? Mitchell Garrison was married before Elaine. His first wife's name was Rachel Fisher. The name hit me like a punch. My sister Rachel? Yes. I pulled the marriage records last night. They were married for 3 years, from 2009 to 2012. She filed for divorce, citing adultery. I hadn't spoken to my sister in over a decade. After her divorce, she'd moved to Seattle and cut contact with most of the family. I'd always wondered what happened, but she never wanted to talk about it. He cheated on Rachel, I said slowly. Multiple times, according to the divorce filing. With coworkers, always at hotels, always on the company dime. She had a nervous breakdown during the divorce proceedings. Spent 6 months in therapy. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Mitchell hadn't just destroyed my marriage. He destroyed my sister's marriage 15 years ago, using the exact same pattern. Does Courtney know? I asked. I doubt it. Rachel's married name was different, and she left Michigan years ago. Samantha's voice hardened. But Dad, this changes things. This isn't just an isolated incident. Mitchell has a pattern of predatory behavior with subordinates. If we can document it, we can destroy him completely. Ow! I'm going to call Rachel. If she's willing to testify about what happened to her, combined with what we have on Courtney, we can show a pattern of corporate misconduct spanning over a decade. Davidson's board won't just fire him. They'll bury him to avoid liability. I thought about my sister, the bright young woman who'd loved cars and engineering, who'd landed a dream job at an automotive company right out of college, and then came home broken 3 years later, refusing to explain why. Call her, I said, but be gentle. This might bring up things she's tried to forget. I will. Samantha hesitated. Dad, I'm sorry. I know this makes it worse. No, I said quietly. It makes it clear. Mitchell Garrison is a predator, and predators need to be stopped. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at my cold coffee. Courtney had texted me twice since Saturday, both messages begging to talk. I'd ignored them both, but now I wondered if she'd known. If she'd known about Rachel, about Mitchell's history, and decided she didn't care. My phone rang again. Unknown number. But I answered. Randall. The voice was tentative, uncertain. It's Rachel. I hadn't heard my sister's voice in 12 years. It took me a moment to respond. Rachel. Samantha called you. She did. She told me about Courtney and Mitchell. A long pause. I'm so sorry, Randall. If I'd known he was still doing this, I would have warned you. It's not your fault. Maybe not. But I could have spoken up years ago. I could have made sure people knew what kind of man he was. Her voice strengthened. Samantha asked if I'd testify about what he did to me. I said yes. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. He destroyed my life. Randall. He made me feel worthless, used, disposable. And then when I tried to fight back, his company buried it with NDAs and settlement money. She took a breath. I'm not letting him do it to anyone else. Not to Courtney. Not to whoever comes after her. This ends now. Thank you. I said quietly. We're family. We should have been talking all these years. Her voice softened. After this is over, maybe we can fix that. I'd like that. After she hung up, I walked out to the garage and looked at the Mustang I'd been restoring. It had been Rachel's car originally, before she sold it to me when she left Michigan. I've been working on it for years, telling myself it was just a hobby, but maybe it had been something else. Maybe it had been my way of holding on to the sister I'd lost. Now maybe I'd get her back. Tuesday morning, the news broke wide open. Not just local business coverage, but regional headlines. Davidson Automotive faces ethics scandal as VP Mitchell Garrison terminated for cause. Samantha forwarded me the internal memo that Janet Robertson had sent to all Davidson employees. It was clinical, professional, and devastating. Mitchell Garrison had been terminated effective immediately for gross violation of corporate ethics policies, including undisclosed relationships with subordinates, misuse of corporate funds, and a pattern of misconduct spanning multiple years. Courtney's name wasn't mentioned specifically, but everyone would know. Corporate gossip moves faster than official communications. My phone rang. It was Elaine Garrison. Have you seen the news? She asked. Just now. Good. My divorce attorney filed papers this morning. Mitchell will be served at his apartment within the hour. Her voice was satisfied, controlled. My forensic accountant found additional evidence. He's been using corporate funds for personal expenses for 7 years. The total is over $200,000. That's embezzlement. That's exactly what it is. Davidson's legal team is considering criminal charges. She paused. There's something else. Janet Robertson discovered that Mitchell has been involved with at least 3 other employees over the past decade. Your sister Rachel was the first. I know. She called me yesterday. She's brave to come forward. The other 2 women are considering it as well, now that they know they're not alone. Elaine's voice turned harder. Mitchell thought he was untouchable because of his position. He forgot that positions can be taken away. What about Courtney? Janet called her in this morning. She's being offered a choice. Resign immediately with a severance package and an NDA, or face termination and potential legal action for violating the ethics policy. Elaine paused. Either way, her career at Davidson is over. After we hung up, I sat in my office staring at my computer screen. An email had come in overnight from my attorney. The divorce papers were ready to file. Section 9 of the prenuptial agreement was ironclad. Courtney would get nothing except what she'd brought into the marriage, which, looking at our financial records, was approximately $37,000 and a leased BMW that was about to be repossessed. My phone buzzed. A text from Courtney. Please, I need to see you. Just once. Let me explain. I looked at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back. There's nothing to explain. My attorney will contact you about the divorce proceedings. Her response came immediately. I made a mistake. I love you. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the text to my attorney with a note. Document everything. Because love isn't words. It's actions, choices, respect. And Courtney had chosen differently. That afternoon, Samantha stopped by the house. She had a bottle of good bourbon and a folder full of paperwork. Rachel's flying in next week, she said, pouring us both a drink. She wants to see you. And the Mustang. I'd like that. Davidson's board is conducting a full audit of Mitchell's department. They found systematic problems going back years. He cultivated a culture where women felt they had to sleep with him to advance. Samantha raised her glass. But that culture just died. Janet's implementing new policies, new oversight, new accountability. We drank in silence for a moment. How are you doing, Dad? Samantha asked quietly. I thought about it. I'm angry. I'm sad. But mostly I'm relieved. I've been mourning this marriage for months. Now it's finally over. That's healthy. And I'm proud. Of you, of Rachel, of everyone who stood up. I looked at my daughter. You didn't have to help me like this. Yes, I did. You're my father. She smiled. Besides, I don't like seeing good men get used by people who mistake kindness for weakness. We finished our drinks as the sun set over Royal Oak. Somewhere across town, Courtney was packing up her office. Mitchell was consulting with criminal attorneys. And I was sitting with my daughter, planning a future that didn't include either of them. It felt like the first honest moment I'd had in months. Friday afternoon, my nephew Tyler showed up at my house unannounced. He was 19, working his way through community college, and apparently working nights at the Palmer House in Chicago. Uncle Randall, he said when I opened the door. I need to show you something. I let him in. He pulled out his phone with hands that shook slightly. I work front desk on weekends. Night shift, 11 to 7. He looked up at me. Last Saturday, I saw Aunt Courtney check in with some guy. I didn't know what to do, so I kept working. Tyler, you don't have to. Wait, there's more. He pulled up a video on his phone. When you showed up with those other people, I was on break. I heard the commotion on the 18th floor, so I went up there. I recorded the whole thing from the hallway. He handed me the phone. The video was shaky but clear. Audio captured everything. Courtney's voice saying, "This isn't what it looks like." My response about her owing Mitchell a fun night. Janet Robertson documenting policy violations. Elaine's cold dismissal of her husband. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "Because Aunt Courtney called my mom last night. She's telling everyone you set her up, that you ambushed her, that none of it was her fault." His jaw tightened. "But I was there, Uncle Randall. I saw her walk into that hotel with him. I saw how they looked at each other. And I heard what she said when you confronted her." I handed back the phone. "What do you want to do with it?" "Whatever helps you. My mom doesn't believe Courtney anymore, but other family members do. This proves exactly what happened." He stood up. "She's trying to make you the villain. I won't let her do that." After he left, I called Samantha. "I need you to secure that video legally," I said. Tyler recorded the confrontation at the Palmer house. "Is it admissible?" Illinois is a one-party consent state for recording. Tyler was present in a public hallway. "It should hold up. Send it to me. I'll have it authenticated and entered into the divorce record." She paused. "Dad, this is going to make things worse for her. She made them worse herself when she started lying." That evening, Rachel called. She was flying in tomorrow morning. "I want to see the Mustang," she said. "And I want to see you. It's been too long, Randall." "It has. I'm sorry about that." "We both are. But we're fixing it now." Her voice strengthened. "Samantha told me about the video Tyler recorded. That kid's got integrity. He gets it from his mother. Your side of the family." She laughed, and it sounded lighter than I remembered. "Maybe we all get it from Dad. He always said the truth matters more than comfort." He was right. Saturday morning, I picked Rachel up from the airport. She looked older, but stronger somehow. Seattle had been good to her. We drove back to Royal Oak mostly in silence, the comfortable kind between people who don't need to fill every moment with words. When we pulled into the garage, and she saw the Mustang, her eyes filled with tears. "You kept it," she whispered. "I've been restoring it. Thought maybe someday you'd want it back." She walked around the car, running her fingers over the paint. "I sold it because I couldn't look at it without remembering Mitchell. Every drive, every memory was tainted. And now it's just a car. A beautiful car that my brother saved." She looked at me. "Thank you, Randall." We spent the afternoon in the garage, working on the engine together like we used to when we were kids. She told me about Seattle, her new husband who taught high school history, her therapy practice helping women recover from abusive relationships. "I turned my trauma into purpose," she said, adjusting a carburetor. "Mitchell tried to destroy me. Instead, he taught me how to help other women fight back. That's not justice. That's transcendence." She smiled. "I'll take it." That evening, Samantha joined us for dinner. 3 generations of Fisher determination around one table, planning the final steps of holding Mitchell Garrison accountable. "His attorney called today," Samantha said. "They want to settle before the criminal investigation goes any further." "What are they offering?" I asked. "Full admission of the affair, no contest to the divorce, agreement to pay your legal fees, and a signed statement acknowledging his pattern of misconduct with employees." Rachel set down her fork. "Tell them he also needs to release me from the NDA he made me sign in 2012. Completely and unconditionally." "I'll add it to the terms," Samantha said. "If he wants to avoid criminal charges, he'll agree." We raised our glasses, water for me, wine for them, and toasted to something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Mitchell's attorney agreed to Samantha's terms by Monday morning. The signed documents arrived by courier that afternoon. Full admission, no contest, release of Rachel's NDA, and a check for $37,000 covering my legal expenses. "He's trying to bury this quietly," Samantha said, reviewing the papers in my office. "But quiet isn't an option anymore." She was right. Tuesday morning, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not for attorneys or judges, but for the court of public opinion. I drafted a LinkedIn post, measured and professional, about corporate ethics and personal integrity. I didn't name Mitchell or Courtney directly. I didn't have to. I wrote about the importance of transparency and leadership, about the courage it takes to hold powerful people accountable, and about the damage caused when corporations protect predators instead of victims. I mentioned that my sister had been victimized by a senior executive years ago, silenced by an NDA, and only recently found the courage to speak out. I wrote about documentation, about patience, about building a case so airtight that denial became impossible. Then I posted it. Within an hour, it had 300 views. By afternoon, 3,000. By evening, it was trending in automotive industry circles with over 47,000 views. The comment section filled with stories. Women from Davidson Automotive and competitors sharing their experiences with harassment, with executives who thought position meant privilege, with HR departments that protected careers instead of people. 2 former Davidson employees reached out directly, sharing their stories about Mitchell. Both had been pressured into relationships. Both had been discarded when they became inconvenient. Both had been silenced with settlements. This is bigger than I thought. I told Samantha that night. It always was. You just gave people permission to talk about it. She showed me her phone. The Detroit Free Press wants to interview you. So does the industry trade publication. What do I say? The truth. That's all you've ever said. Wednesday morning, a reporter came to my house. We sat in my office, and I told the story. Not with anger, not with bitterness, just with facts. The timeline, the documentation, the pattern that stretched back over a decade. What do you want to happen to Mr. Garrison? The reporter asked. I want him to face consequences. Real ones. Not settlements and NDAs and quiet resignations. I want other men in his position to see what happens when you treat people as disposable. The article ran Thursday morning. Automotive executives fall shows pattern of corporate misconduct. It was detailed, damning, and entirely factual. Davidson Automotive's stock dropped 2 points by noon. Their PR department issued a statement by afternoon. Davidson Automotive has zero tolerance for harassment and misconduct. We are conducting a comprehensive review of our corporate culture and implementing new oversight procedures. Too little, too late, but at least it was something. Courtney tried calling that evening. I didn't answer. She sent a text. You destroyed my life for revenge. I responded once. I documented your choices. You destroyed your own life. Then I blocked her number. Friday afternoon, Elaine Garrison called with news. Mitchell's being investigated by the Michigan Attorney General's office for embezzlement. The criminal charges are moving forward despite his settlement with you. Her voice carried satisfaction. He'll likely face prison time, Randall. 2 to 5 years if he pleads guilty. More if it goes to trial. Good. I thought you want to know. Your LinkedIn post was the catalyst. It gave other victims courage to come forward. The Attorney General now has testimony from 7 women spanning 15 years. After we hung up, I walked out to the garage where Rachel was putting the finishing touches on the Mustang. She decided to keep it here, in Michigan, as a reminder that you can reclaim things that were taken from you. It's done, she said, stepping back to admire the restored engine. Yes, I agreed. It is. The divorce hearing took place on a cold Tuesday in February, 3 months after the Palmer House confrontation. I arrived with Samantha, both of us dressed professionally, carrying briefcases full of documentation we probably wouldn't need. Courtney sat across the courtroom with her attorney, a young woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Courtney had lost weight, her suit hung loose, and her eyes carried the hollow look of someone who'd spent months watching their life dismantle piece by piece. The judge reviewed the prenuptial agreement, particularly Section 9. Then she reviewed the evidence. Hotel records, expense reports, Tyler's video, Janet Robertson's HR investigation findings, and the signed admission from Mitchell Garrison's settlement. Ms. Fisher, the judge said, using Courtney's maiden name, do you contest any of the evidence presented regarding your relationship with Mitchell Garrison? Courtney's attorney whispered something to her. She shook her head. No, Your Honor. Do you contest the applicability of Section 9 of your prenuptial agreement? Another whispered consultation. No, Your Honor. The judge made notes, then looked up. Given the clear evidence of professional infidelity, as defined in the prenuptial agreement, I'm ruling in favor of the petitioner. Ms. Fisher will receive only the assets she brought into the marriage, plus her personal belongings. All jointly acquired property, including the marital home, vehicles, and investment accounts, remain with Mr. Fisher. The gavel came down. Samantha squeezed my shoulder. Courtney stood up, looking at me across the courtroom with an expression I couldn't quite read. Regret, maybe. Or just exhaustion. Outside the courthouse, Rachel was waiting. She'd flown in for the hearing, moral support wrapped in determination. How do you feel? She asked. Relieved. Free. I looked up at the gray Michigan sky. Like I can finally move forward. Good. Because I have news. She smiled. Mitchell's trial date got set. June 15th. They're charging him with embezzlement, fraud, and 6 counts of workplace harassment. His attorney thinks he'll take a plea deal to avoid trial. How long? 3 to 5 years, plus restitution to Davidson Automotive and the women he harassed. She linked her arm through mine. He's done, Randall. Completely and permanently done. That evening, Samantha, Rachel, and I had dinner at my house. The divorce papers were signed, the house was officially mine, and the Mustang sat in the garage, fully restored and gleaming. What's next for you, Dad? Samantha asked. I've been thinking about expanding the consulting firm, maybe hiring a few people, taking on bigger projects. I looked at both of them. I spent years making myself smaller to accommodate Courtney's ambitions. Time to stop doing that. Rachel raised her glass. To getting bigger. We drank to that, to new beginnings built on the rubble of old mistakes. 15 months after that night in Chicago, I stood in my garage looking at an empty space where the Mustang used to be. Rachel had driven it back to Seattle the previous week, finally ready to reclaim that piece of her past without letting it define her future. My consulting firm had grown. 3 new employees, an office in downtown Royal Oak, contracts with 2 major automotive manufacturers. I'd stopped making myself small, and the business had responded. Samantha stopped by one Saturday afternoon in March, bringing coffee and news. Mitchell took the plea deal, she said. 4 years in federal prison, 3 years probation, and permanent ban from corporate leadership positions. He starts serving next month. And Courtney. Last I heard, she's working as an administrative assistant in Grand Rapids, making about $40,000 a year, living in a studio apartment. Samantha paused. She tried to friend me on LinkedIn last week. I declined. That's fair. Davidson Automotive settled with all 7 women Mitchell harassed. Undisclosed amounts, but Rachel told me hers was enough to fund a scholarship program for women in automotive engineering. Samantha smiled. Something good came from all of it. Later that evening, I drove out to Belle Isle, watching the Detroit River flow past. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Randall Fisher? My name is Claire. Your daughter gave me your number. She thought we might have coffee sometime. I looked at the message for a long moment. Samantha had been trying to set me up for months, convinced I was ready to date again. Maybe she was right. I'd like that. I typed back. How's next Saturday? The response came quickly. Perfect. Looking forward to it. I put the phone away and watched the sunset paint the river gold. Somewhere in Michigan, Mitchell Garrison was preparing for prison. Courtney was rebuilding a life much smaller than the one she destroyed. And I was here, free and whole, ready to build something new. Some people think revenge is about destruction. But real justice is simpler than that. It's about consequences meeting choices, about documentation meeting truth, about patient men refusing to be made into fools. I've been all 3 of those things, patient, documented, and truthful. And in the end, that had been more powerful than any dramatic confrontation could have been. The sun set completely, and I drove home to a house that was finally, completely, peacefully mine.